This tutorial series is brought to you by Polygon. Make better renders faster. G'day, and welcome to the final part of level 2, where we're going to be finishing off our donut. Oh, sad little tear. We've been so many places. It's looking okay. You know, the last part we added in some small scale detail, but now we want to add in some larger scale detail to go with our small detail, and then also make it impact the color map. So first, the large scale detail. Looking at reference, you can see that this is what we're trying to create, right? Like, we've got not just like small little bumps across it, but also larger bumps, like pimples. I don't want to call them pimples, but that's what they kind of look like. So the cool thing is about working with nodes, and the reason that so many artists love them, is that you can do so much with them. They take a little while to understand. Like at first glance, they're confusing. But once you realize that it's almost like programming. It's like taking this attribute and putting it into that attribute, and you know, it's fun, and it's actually like creative. Like from an artistic perspective, you can do a lot with nodes. So what we can do is we can duplicate this noise texture, take the output of the object input, same one as there, and let's Control-Shift-Click on that. Using Node Wrangler, we can do that. And then I'm going to set the scale to 200, right? And this is going to become our large scale bumps, right? Now, if we were to take the output of this and just put that into the displacement there, you would see that, yes, it's connected to the displacement, but it has overridden this one, right? The small scale one. Let me just... things get a little bit squishy on a screen when you're trying to show two things at once. But yeah, you can only put one in there, right? It just overrides and kicks the other one out. So what we want to do is combine the two of these. So because these are black and white values, this is actually very easy to do. So what we're going to do is add in a mix RGB node. So if we go, this is Shift A. Oh man, always turns off. There we go. Shift A, and then go to color, mix RGB, and we're going to drop this in right here. And we're going to make sure we take in the factor input of both of them, not the color. It wants to use the color, but don't let it. The factor input of both, and I'm going to put them in like so. Now, if we Control-Shift-Click on the mix shader, this is what the mix is outputting right now. If the factor amount here is set to 0, it's going to be using 100% of the top input, which in this case is the small detail. If it's set to 1, it's going to be using 100% of the bottom input. And that's not good because we actually want both of them, but doing a blend isn't also the answer. Those of you that know, image software though, knows that you can change a blend type and it can be more than just like one or the other. So if you set this to add, what it's going to do is it's going to take the bright values from this texture and then apply it over the top of the values on the other texture. So that should be exactly what we want. And if we turn the factor all the way up to 1, then it should have that kind of look. So the small detail and then the larger detail sort of punching through it. So I'm going to Control-Click on that shader there, and that's the look that we have right now. Now this isn't, it's maybe better, but it's still looking quite fake, right? It just looks like you've got more detail, but it's all just kind of like mashed in together. And what we want is like very clear, like lumps, like whoop, 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 like big bumps. So if we look at the factor input, we can kind of see why this is happening, because we haven't just got the white values, we've also got all different shades and things in between it. Well, if you remember, like when we worked with the color ramp node before with sprinkles, that can change, it can transform a value. Color ramp node it's beautiful. We use it a lot, especially for things like this. So if we go Shift A, converter, color ramp, and if we drop this between our large scale detail and our add node, then let's just Control-Shift-Click on it so we can just see what it's looking at. If I only want to have those white values and I don't want to have too much of the other stuff, if I bring in this black slider there, then we'll get exactly that. We'll only get the top values. And then assuming that this is, oh gosh, what's it actually doing now? Okay, it looks a little confusing, but I'll show you the final node setup at the end so you can copy it. But anyways, now if we have a look at the add node, this is what we should be looking at. So now you can see there's a clear division. We've got the small detail and the larger detail. And now let's have a look at the final shader. And you can see it looks a little bit cleaner. right? Now you can turn, if you feel that the small detail is a little too high, which I think it is, let's turn that down to a scale of about 0.02. Or the other thing you can do, like the bottom input is the one which is always controlled by this. The top input is always at 100%. So if you actually want, in this case, we want the large scale detail to be the one which is furthest out. So I think it actually makes sense to put the large scale detail in the top input and then actually use the slider to decide how much of the small detail to let through. And now I think that actually has a better control because we can actually have that kind of lumpy look and then bring in as much small detail as we want. So this is like basically putting like an opacity on the small detail of like 70%. And that's kind of cool. I might actually turn that up to 2000 for the small detail. And I think that's pretty good. Not too shabby. By the way, I hope you can't hear it, but somebody is vacuuming. It's a Sunday. I come in here to do some work before I go off on my trip. So I have to work on Sundays, and then the cleaners are here, of course. But anyways, the bumps are good, and I'm actually I'm quite happy with this. I've tried like 50 different variations of how to make this donut, like the bump parts, how to make it look good, and I think this is one of the best. So yay! I'm glad it's worked for the tutorial. But it's right now it's only influencing the bump, and that would kind of be a waste because most things in the real world, like if it's affecting the bump of this, it's also going to affect the color of it. Like if we look at the reference photo, you can see that wherever there is a bump, it's generally darker than the stuff underneath it. And I believe it's because it's like, it's further out and therefore it's got like more surface area and therefore it's going to be hitting more new oil and therefore it's going to be like it's going to be cooked more than the stuff that's underneath it. That's my understanding of it. But anyways, so yeah, we could take the value of this. Actually, let's move this shader over so it's a little easier to understand. So this is the data that's contributing to the bumpness of it. So what we want to do is we want to drive this into the base color. But just like before when we were using the single input, it'll only take one input, and we don't want it to look like a donut that was left in an Egyptian tomb for 2,000 years or something. I don't know. We wanted to, we want to influence our texture map, right? So we're going to do that in the exact same way. So we're going to use a Shift-A mix RGB color node. So I'm going to drop this in right here. And what I want to do is I want to take the output of this and I want to put this into the factor input. Okay, so let's just move this along. I'm trying to get it all in the screen, but I also want you to be able to see the details of what I'm doing here. So this add is going into the factor input. Now the factor input, normally there's a slider there, right, which will control the opacity. But if you replace that and put something into the factor input, that's going to make it act like a mask. So it's going to make it use the black and white values of this to decide which parts of color 1 and which parts of color 2 to use, these inputs. So the reason I'm doing it like that is that I can now make this, and you can see that this bottom value here is now becoming the values that are sticking out. So if I was to set this to a dark value like this, you can see that it's the exact effect that I want. But even better, and this is why I've done it specifically this way, I can change this to overlay. And now it's actually affecting it. It's not just like a blanket, like, opaque, like painting on top of something else. It's also being tweaked by the values underneath it. So it's like saturating it, and it's essentially making it look like it's burnt, which is the look that we want. Ta-da! And there we have our lovely, crispy looking donut. If it looks a little too saturated, you could maybe dial it back, maybe make it look a little bit darker if you wanted to. You could tweak these values forever. Anyways, that is the finished node setup. If you want to copy my values, feel free. I would encourage you, though, to mix it up. And if you think you've got a better idea, go for it. Like learning and like venturing out and like stepping away from the tutorial path will really help you learn some of these and sort of solidify the methods in your brain, if that makes sense. And it'll help you learn a lot better. So definitely get creative and venture away from this, but I do want to show that. Anyways, guys, that is it. We finished the donut. Yay! So this was obviously the first two levels, just focusing on the donut. Level 3, we are going to do a coffee mug, a glass coffee mug with coffee in it, and that's going to involve transparency, volumetrics, texturing, UV unwrapping. And then level 4, we're going to put both the donut, the coffee, we're going to add a brick wall, a counter table, as well as do like a little finished animation as well. So we're halfway through it, guys. I hope you will continue the series. Just because I know some people might be wondering why theirs doesn't look like mine, or like how can they improve it. I'll just quickly mention a couple of things that you can do to improve your donut. I think the big one is the sprinkles. Like the size of your sprinkles and the number of sprinkles can really make a difference. So experiment with that. Definitely experiment with it. And the distribution. The distribution of your sprinkles and like the size of them. I think a big ball, that might help it look kind of cool. Something else I realized after we did the weight painting was when you're in weight paint mode, I realized it's probably very unusual that you would have a uniform, exact distribution of sprinkles all around the donut. It's kind of silly. So instead, I would suggest just like doing a couple of holes in it, right? Or areas where you would have less sprinkles than other parts, right? Because if you're sprinkling it with your hand, you're definitely going to get parts where there's going to be like way more sprinkles than others. So I feel like any variation and randomness you can add, the better. So that's something that you can do. There we go. Looks a little bit more random, a little bit more interesting. And then the other thing is, of course, the material for the icing. Play with this. Like, I'm actually still not sure exactly what the correct value should be. I've gone through several iterations of it. I'm not sure if it should be like a stronger subsurface scattering, let more light through it, or less. So definitely play with it. Play with the color schemes. That's definitely going to help you. And then also, if you find that when you did the texture painting, if at the end of it you realize that you've got like too much of the white is coming through, like if you've overdid the white painting, which is something that I did for the first few times I made the donut myself, a really quick fix, if you don't want to have to redo the painting, is right in between here. If you just add in a mix RGB node like this, and then you set the bottom value to just a blank, like uniform donut value, like, that's original value that we had, right? That orangey kind of yellow value. Then this value here will decide like 0 is going to be 100% your original texture painting. And then any of this will kind of be like adding a solid color overlay in Photoshop. It's kind of like just adding that over the top of it. So you can like completely overpower your original texture painting if you want, or like a value in between it. But I happen to think mine looks okay. So that's the value that I am going to go with. And just for something completely silly to end on, because you made it to the end, guys. You made it to the end of level 2. Well, not the end. You've still got 2 more levels to go, but just something fun. And in the spirit of the old series, let's make this icing radioactive. So there is an emission value, in the material for our icing here. Icing selected. That's the one. Yep. So I can go emission. And if I turn that up to white, that's now going to be glowing white. And then I can make this any weird color that I wanted to. I can make it radioactive green, like, was it Homer? He was eating a donut that was radioactive green, wasn't he? Something like that. Something completely silly to end on. But thank you, guys. I hope you will enjoy the next series. If you're watching this like live as I upload them, like to date, there's going to be a 2-week break because I'm going to Japan and Korea for a business and family trip. So there's going to be a 2-week break, and then when I come back, you will be able to continue the journey of level 3 and level 4. But otherwise, click here when the video is available, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.